everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Banter with Oye, and we're still reviewing the book by Maxillian, Oil, Politics, and Violence. Today, I'm going to be talking about the reaction of the people to the coup. And we're going to be talking about the reaction of the people to the coup as well as the military to the coup. That is, external military people that were not part of the coup. How did they react to the coup? Now, on Saturday, January 15th, 1966, Lagosians woke up. They had their lights had been cut off and their phone lines were cut off. Now, and then we were surprised. In my head, I'm like, 1966, January 15th. You people were worried that there was no lights. Like, there's no lights currently in Lagos. I'll just come out and say, who does not have lights? Okay, everybody does not have lights, and we're good. But anyways, they were worried that why was our lights gone off? Why has our light gone off? Phone lights off. And when they found out the reason, they were excited. They were happy. Lagosians were happy about the reason why their phone lines were cut off, and the reason why they didn't have any electricity. Soldiers, on the other hand, they thought that it was basically political talks of both parties fighting against each other. But when they found out the real reason, they were not happy. Politicians, on the other hand, that morning, out of 300 parliament members, only 40 of them showed up. Most of them were too scared to even show up at the parliament, and they left almost immediately. On the other hand, at the police HQ in Lagos, the GOC, General Officer Commanding, which is Commander Aguiyi was meeting with, he was meeting with his war cabinet, the Inspector General of Police, the political special branch, the military attaches to the UK. And, when he first met with them, all of them were suspicious of him because, hey, Agoye is an able man. But then in the moment during their conversation, they got a call or they got notified about the unfortunate death of the Sardana, which is Amanda Bello. And they all saw how Agoye broke down and how sad he was and how much he was. Basically, he was shaken up and he was crying. And at that point, that sort of reduced their suspicion of Agoye. By midday of that same day, the remaining members of the council they basically tried to call like a meeting and then they asked Agoye to please protect the parliament building. At this point, they also asked that the British military would help them to suppress the rebellion. The British said, oh my God, yes, we are going to help you. You have not called us. You should have told us since. Tell us. Why didn't you call us? However, we would need an authorization from the Prime Minister. Like the Prime Minister that is missing has to give an authorization in order for the military to help. So the next thing for them to do was, they had to try and get an acting prime minister. Now remember that there's an alliance between MPC, which is the Northern People's Congress, and the NCNC, which is the Igbo-led party. There was an alliance between them. So they wanted to select an acting prime minister. Now that became a whole political debate because the NCNC, the head of NCNC, needs to go and sit with his people to decide that, oh, this is the people that the MPC or the Northern People's Congress are actually suggesting. Do you agree? And that was a whole conversation, which we had to wait for them to have that conversation. Now, on the other hand, still around Lagos, Ademoyega and Anoforo, who are the Coup part of the Coup members, were on the loose. They were trying to figure out how they're going to scheme their way past all the road checkpoints that Aguiyi had now set up. And Obieno, who is one of Major Obieno, who is one of the coup plotters, did not show up to their meeting point. So they decided to go and meet Obieno at Abeokuta. And they also had to get rid of, they were carrying. At that point, the finance minister, Okoti Ebo, was still very much alive with them. So on their way, they met the superintendent, which is around Songwater bus stop. But the man did not suspect them. He just thought they were part of the coup. The superintendent did not suspect them because he thought they were part of the group that were trying to, suppress the rebellion. So he let them go on their merry way. After a few kilometers from the checkpoint, they then dumped all the corpses they had in the bush. Okoti was then led, the finance minister was then led into the bush by Ademoyiga and Anofru. And Anofru offed him in that moment. Now, the death of Balewa and Okoti seemed to be an afterthought, according to the book. Now, this is where me myself, while reading the book, got confused because it said they dumped corpses in the bush and then they led Okoti into the bush and offed him. And then the book jumped into the death of Balewa and Okoti is an afterthought without saying who, how, when Balewa was killed. Nothing was said about it. This made me like, okay, what exactly or how did, Balewa really pass away? First account I found, a former external affairs minister, Chief MT Ubu, he said Balewa died due to an asthma attack. The book mentioned that the captors promised not to off him because they understand that the state of the country was not his fault. By him, I mean Baliwa. That was what they thought of him. They didn't blame him for any situation within the country. So the book is trying to say that they didn't have intentions of offing him. Now, according to Chief Femi Fanikayode, that's the book. According to Chief Femi Fanikayode, he said Tafawa Baliwa was killed by Ifejuna. Now, I want to believe he had the names confused because Ifejuna was not part of this crew. Yes, he was part of the coup plotters, but for another region. Anofro and Ademoyiga were the ones within this, were the ones manning the Lagos side of the coup. And they were the ones responsible for, the death of Okoti and Balewa in the real sense of things. So, but according to Chief Fanikayode, he said Ifejuna offed Tafawa Balewa. Now, another interesting fact by Chief Olusegun Oshoba, who is the former governor of Lagos State, he said Balewa's body was discovered January 21st, 1966. His body was found in a sitting position, resting on a tree. And few meters away from him was the decomposing body of Okoti, pointing to the fact that Balewa's body seemed like he had just passed and he was just placed there, whereas there was a decomposing body of Okoti. In fact, there was already maggots coming out of his own body, which is an irony for his name, which is Festering Sam, which is sad. So basically, his own account is trying to point to the fact that if they were offed on the same day, how come one's body was already decomposing while the other one was fresh? Now, my thoughts is it doesn't matter who, at this point, it doesn't matter who really offs Balewa. But if maybe, just maybe, if Balewa was not kidnapped by Anofro and Nemoyiga, he wouldn't have been offed. So they are culpable for his mother. It is what it is. They kidnapped him, so they are responsible, even though we don't know who actually did the shooting or finally, once they did that, according to the book, once they left that part of, Songota and they headed to Ebelkota, they did not find Obieno. They did not find Major Obieno, who is who they were going to look for. Who was the one they were going to look for in Abeokuta. However, Anoforo was able to use his familiarity with Obieno's units to get armored vehicles and convoys from there, and then they were going back to Lagos. Now, on their way, they had some other junior military officers join their convoy with their own armored tank rather, with their own armored tank. And you must know that at this point, information doesn't travel so fast as much as it will now. So along the road that we were going, then the junior majors that followed Anofuru and Ademoyega got a radio. That was when they realized that they were in the midst of mutineers. And later they found out they turned around and they were already going. And then that led to a standoff between these junior officers and then Anofuru and Ademoyega. They actually tried to, have like a shootout, but at some point they had to answer because they were more than them. So that's how they lost this armored tank that they were hoping to use. And that was the final coffin in the nail for Ademoyega and Anoforo. Saturday, January 15th to Sunday. The surviving senior military officers, they had an emergency meeting, and basically the surviving military officers were um, Lieutenant Colonel Ojuku, Major Agoyi, Commodore Way, Colonel Banjo, Gowon Faji, and a couple of them. Now, at this stage, there was further unrest. There were overzealous junior officers who were just setting up roadblocks and harassing civilians. But finally, they were sent back by Babangida, by Ibrahim Babangida. And at this time, Major Iziogu, on the other hand, he still had control of the northern region and was threatening to march south to come and fight. At this point, Agoye realized that in order for him to, to be difficult to maintain, he realized that it would be difficult to maintain a civilian rule. And another coup could start from people that sympathize with these coup members. There were officers that actually supported the coup in a sense that while they understood the grievances of the military guys that actually, were part that actually perpetrated the coup, they did not believe in the violence that was perpetrated. And they felt like, oh, these politicians they've had it coming. But however, they don't like the way it is. And then they started encouraging Agoye, like maybe it is time to move from, a civilian role to a military role. At this point, the civilians have still not come together with to give him who is going to be the acting prime minister. They were not forthcoming. So by Sunday evening, Agoye called for a meeting with the ministers. And at this point, the meeting was more tense. The ministers could feel that the meeting was more tense than the previous one that they had had with him. Agoye was scolding them for their policies. For example, was forcing radicalized university students into the military, reducing the standard of entry into the military, all of those things. And he told them that as a result, it's possible that the military would have to step in. And the civilians sort of agreed with him at that point because they were still very shaken up. They were still very scared. There was military presence everywhere, so they didn't even argue. A note was taken by Abdul Razak on a piece of paper, and they basically agreed to it. And eventually, the person that was supposed to then become the acting prime minister, Deeprich, Deeprichamra, Deep Charima, Deep Charima or the Charima and Mbadiwe, they actually signed the paper. And that's how they agreed to move from civilian rule to military rule. So in the next episode, we'll be talking about Agoye, the man, the myth, the legend. We'll also be talking about, how they really did the handover. And then secondly, we would also speak to how were the military coup, how were the coup plotters caught? Because at this point they were still roaming around, and then you still had Izzy Kaduna and Zego in the north going crazy. So how did they get to arrest them? How did they catch all of these people? So that's what we'll be talking about in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment and share with your friends. Thank you so much for watching with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.